Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to PMP Live. My name is Leah, and I'm a bookseller at Politics and Prose, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. So thank you so much for joining us and tuning in this virtual format, which allows us to continue to bring awesome authors and their new books to readers like you. So I'm so excited to welcome our very special guest today, Christina Soontorvat. And, and in just a few moments, we're going to begin our chat. But just first, a few things. If you have a question for Christina, you can click on the Ask a Question button at the bottom of your screen, and you can add one there. And at the end of our chat, we're going to have time for our guests to answer some of your questions. As always, remember that this is a creative, safe space, and we ask folks to be respectful of one another and any questions and comments. And you can also click on that shining green buy button at the bottom of your screen to get your own copy of Christina's new book, A Wish in the Dark, yay, as well as any of our other awesome titles from our website. And if you're a student joining us today, please check with an adult before buying anything, of course. And lastly, just a reminder, as we always like to say, that unlike in our in-person events, our guests and audience members can't see you through the screen, so you're welcome to come as you are, get comfortable, and enjoy the discussion. So now on to the event we're waiting for. It is my pleasure to introduce the amazingly talented author and educator, Christina Soontorvat. Christina has introduced readers to several of her amazing and fantastical worlds, including her middle grade series, The Changelings, and the early chapter book series, Diary of an Ice Princess. Christina has a background also in mechanical engineering and science education, and she has also worked in science museum field, designing engaging programs and exhibits for kids and sharing her joy of learning new things. And today we're celebrating her newest amazing book, A Wish in the Dark. Set in the beautiful Thai-inspired world, this luminous fantasy adventure brings a new twist on Victor Hugo's Les Miserables and continues this really important conversation of identity, justice, and what it means to do the right thing. This is seriously one of my favorite books this year, so I'm so excited for our guest to share it with us. So it is my honor to welcome Christina Soontorvat. The virtual stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Leah. That was a great introduction. And thank you so much for having me. I love Politics and Prose, and I wish I could see all of you, but just know that I'm really glad that you're here and listening. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the book. I'm going to tell you what it's about and how I got the idea. I'm going to share some pictures. Actually, I have some video, but I don't know if they're going to I'm not going to be able to share them with you. And then, yeah, if you'll type in your questions, I'll get to answer your questions. You can ask me anything about writing, about books. You can ask me about how to bake sourdough bread, and I won't be able to answer that because I'm a terrible baker, but you can just ask me and I'll just make it up. So I am coming to you from my house in Austin, Texas. I'm sitting on the floor in my living room because that's where our router is, and that's where I get the best internet reception. And I am going to go ahead and share my screen so I can show you some images as I'm talking about what this book is about. And here we go. Okay, so A Wish in the Dark. Yes, this is a fantasy novel, and it is set, I think you can tell from the front cover that it's not set in the United States. This is set in a magical version of Thailand, which is where my dad is from. He was born in Thailand. He immigrated to the United States when he was a teen, and I'll talk more about him in a minute. And this cover, the beautiful cover by artist Ji Hyuk Kim, has two of the main characters on the front. So the boy in the boat is Pong, and the girl in the background there, her name is Nok. Now, Pong is a boy who was born in a place that's pretty much like a prison. So his mother was sent to jail for stealing, and she died while in childbirth. And so he is an orphan, and he still lives at the prison. So in Pong's world, if you're born in the prison, you have to stay there until you're 13 years old. And that's like for your protection is what the government says. So Pong has a best friend named Somkit, and Somkit and Pong are they're both orphans there, and they both look after each other and take care of each other. They're really more like brothers than they are just best friends. If you think that the rule that says that you have to stay in a prison when you're a child is a bad rule and unfair, you are absolutely right. It is not a great rule at all. And there are many laws and many rules in Pong's world that are unfair. So Pong lives in a world that's full of magic. So all of the lights in the city that Pong lives in are created by magic. A long time ago, there was a fire in the city, and the entire city almost burned to the ground. And a man came into the city, and he had this magical power to create light without using fire. So there would be no danger of fire anymore, and the city could have light. And so the people of the city made this man their leader, and he creates light for everyone, but he doesn't create it equally. So people who deserve, quote unquote, the light, who are like the more wealthy and privileged people in the city, get the brightest lights, and people like Pong and Sumkit who live in the prison, they have like the very dimmest lights, and they really live in darkness. As you can imagine, Pong desperately wants to escape. He hates where he lives, and one day he gets his chance to escape. Some of you who are watching may know what this image is. This is the fruit that's called durian. And so Pong's chance to escape comes when he crawls into a trash can that is full of durian. And if you know what this is, you know that this is not an easy way to escape from anything. Durian is a fruit that tastes heavenly, and it smells horrible. And if it's been sitting in a trash can in the sun, it smells even worse. So Pong escapes, and he floats down the river. He makes his way to a small village where there is a Buddhist temple. And when he gets to the temple, a kind monk hides him, and Pong disguises himself as a young monk. So he shaves his head, he wears the monk's robes, and he starts to think that, maybe he could hide in the temple forever and no one would ever find him. And he starts to think, maybe people have forgotten about him. But oh no, he has not been forgotten. And years later, there is someone who shows up in his village. It is the prison warden's family. And the daughter of the prison warden is Nok, and she recognizes Pong, and she thinks that the right thing to do is to turn him back in and return him to prison. In Nok's mind, he is the one who did something wrong. He broke the law, and for that, he should be punished. And Nok sees this opportunity to bring honor to her family and make them proud of her. And when you learn more about Nok, you understand why that's so important. So she becomes obsessed with tracking him down and turning him back in. She chases him. He runs away. They go back to this big bustling city, the city of lights. And Pong is able to disappear into the city because there's so many people. And when he's there, he starts to learn more about the way that the city is set up. He learns he was not the only one who had an unfair life, and a lot of the people in the city are suffering. And Pong actually has an opportunity to help the people. But if he does that, he risks getting caught by Nok and taken back to jail. So he has to decide, is he going to help and stay, or is he going to run away and help himself? And the story goes back and forth between Pong's point of view and Nok's point of view. And so you get to see how they interpret the events from different points of view all throughout the story. So that is the setup for A Wish in the Dark. And I won't tell you more. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I did want to talk a little bit about how I got the idea and about the setting. As Leah was saying, it's one of the, there's not many middle grade books that are set in Thailand. And it's I think one of the first middle grade fantasies that's set in Thailand. So I really want to talk to you about that. This is the city of Bangkok now. This is where my dad lives. He is there right now. He was planning to come back to the United States. He goes back and forth, and he did not get on a plane right before coronavirus hit. And so he is there, and I don't know when I'm going to get to see him again. But I think you can see from this picture that Bangkok is a super modern city. It's huge. There's skyscrapers. It's, very high tech. Like they have better Wi-Fi than I do at my house. But it was not this way when my dad was growing up. And so when he would tell stories about growing up in Bangkok in the 50s and 60s, he painted a picture that was more like this. It was smaller. The river. The river is still very important to city life in Bangkok, but at the time when he was growing up, it was even more integral to the daily life of people who lived there. So a lot of people had their homes and their businesses right on the river. My dad's family, they owned like a cargo ship, like a barge, and that's how they made their money. They would take goods upriver and, take stuff back and forth up and down the river. And my dad would go swimming in the river, which it's the Chao Phraya River that runs through Bangkok. It's like, if you could imagine swimming in the Mississippi River, it's just this really big, wide river. And he and his friends would hitch rides on the backs of motorboats and cross the river back and forth, which I just always loved hearing those stories because it was so different from my childhood growing up in Texas. And so when I started thinking about writing A Wish in the Dark and where to set the story, I knew that this would be a wonderful place for the story, that the river would just make such a great, rich setting for the book. Here's a picture of me and my dad on the right. That's me when I was, I think, in 5th grade. I have a thing that for some of you young people watching, you will not know what this is, and it is called a perm. And my dad and I had matching perms, if you look closely, because it was the 80s, and that's what you did. In fact, actually, my dad, he had a perm for like my entire life, and I don't think he stopped perming it until I got into high school. And I honestly thought that my dad had naturally curly hair, which is just hilarious to me if you think about it, because there are no type of people with like curly hair, but I thought he just had these luxurious natural curls. So anyway, on the left-hand side there, that's him. I don't know how old he was there. He was, like an older teenager. It was before he came to the United States. So my dad was a monk. He spent 2 times as a monk, actually. And in Thailand, it's quite common for young men and boys to spend some part of their life. It might be just a short time, for tween age boys, it might just be a few weeks or a month, and it might be longer for young men to spend at the temple, devoting themselves to temple life as a monk. And it brings, it brings honor to their families. So my dad did it when his grandmother died, to just honor her. It's sort of like a rite of passage, I guess. So he would talk about stories about that as well, and about the monks and the teachers that he had at the temple. And so that was another really important part of the book. One of the characters in the book is a monk, and he's one of the most important characters. He's the one who helps Pong hide away. Let's see, what do I have here? Oh, and this is my dad and my mom and me when I was a baby. And those are my Texas grandparents who lived on a farm in East Texas, at the top there. And at the bottom, those are my Thai grandparents at their house in Bangkok. And I like to show this picture. I've been talking to students and doing some virtual visits with students. And I like showing pictures of just our family, because I tell them that, when I was their age, I had never met an author before. And I had very inaccurate ideas about what an author was and where they came from. So I sort of thought all authors were British. I thought that they lived in country houses, in manors. I thought they all went to like Harvard and Oxford, and you had to have an MFA to be an author. And I thought all authors wrote at typewriters and were just brilliant geniuses. So, I like sharing these pictures because I don't have a background like that at all. And my stories that I write, they're just really, really inspired by my family. And my family, we have humble origins. regular people, and we have stories that are not unlike the stories that everyone watching has. So if you're wondering if you have a story that's worth telling, or you have a story that should be shared, I am here to tell you, you absolutely have a story that only you can tell, and that is just as fascinating and just as interesting as anything that's getting published today. And this is another picture that I show because everybody likes to see embarrassing photos of authors when they were kids, and this is kind of embarrassing. So I'm just trying to humanize what an author is, okay? Where we can also be very embarrassing. So that is the intro to the book. These are pictures from Thailand, from the fruit markets in Thailand, and those are my kids eating treats and snacks from the fruit market. I show that because fruit plays a really important part in the story. The opening chapter of the book starts off with a mango tree, and actually the story ends with a mango tree too. And I told you that durian is a really important part in the story. So whenever we go to Thailand to visit my family, we always have a really big family meal. We're either eating at home or at a restaurant, and then we always end the night by going out to hit up a fruit market and bring the fruit back, and we just cut up all the fruit and stuff ourselves silly with the fruit. So let's see, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If I can find oh, there we go. There we go. And then the other thing I will show you, if I can reach it without pulling my headphones out. So Leah mentioned that that A Wish in the Dark is a twist on Les Miserables. So I thought I would share my copy. I think this is the only copy that I had. I think this is the copy that I read in high school. So yes, A Wish in the Dark is based on Les Miserables by Victor Hugo. That's probably my favorite novel. And I'll tell you how I got the idea to twist the novel. So when I was 10, we went on one of our family trips to go to Thailand, and we would go to Thailand like every year, every summer or every other summer. And that year when we went, my mom brought this book with her. I think that I don't know, I need to ask her. If my mom is watching, I'm wondering, Mom, did you bring it because it was the biggest book you could find? This book is like 1,600 pages. And at that time in the 80s, if you went over to Asia, it was hard to find English books. And they didn't have, English programs on television. Of course, there wasn't any internet. So I think she brought this because she knew it would take her a long time to read it. And we were going to be there for weeks. But she was reading the story during the day, and at night she would recap the story for me. So she would summarize it. If you've read it before, you probably know that it's not really a story that a 10-year-old could read. It's pretty dense, and it was originally written in French, but she did such a good job. She made the story so exciting. So for those of you who don't know, Les Miserables is a story of a man, an adult man, who escapes from his life as a prisoner, and he is on the run from a policeman. And so the policeman in the story is the villain, one of the villains, and the convict is the hero. And his journey to discover that he is a good person and he has the ability to help other people. And actually, he is the one who's going to change the fate of all of the people that he meets. That is really what's at the core of A Wish in the Dark. One interesting thing I will tell you that I love about this book that I do not think you could get away with now if you were writing a story is that the first 300 pages or something, it's like a really long chunk of the book, is about a character that is so minor to the actual rest of the course of the story. So the book starts off talking about a priest, and the priest is the person who's like the monk in A Wish in the Dark. The priest shows compassion to the convict who runs away, to Jean Valjean. And so the theme of compassion is woven all through the book, and that is the overarching theme of A Wish in the Dark. So if there's one thing that I want people to take away from the story, it's that everyone deserves compassion, and we all have that power, no matter who we are, no matter what our background is, and no matter what anyone thinks of us, we have the power to show compassion to others. And it's a superpower. And it can change the whole course of the world if we choose to give it freely. And so with that, I think I'll take a break, because I feel like I've been talking for a while. And we can see if Leah wants to come back on, and if she has some questions. I think some people might be asking questions.
Hi, thank you so much, Christina. That was awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. So now I guess we'll go on to our question and answer part. You can still add more questions or vote on ones that you really want us to get to. Right down there that Ask a Question. So let's take our first one. So our first one is from our friend Erin Trotta-Kelly. And Erin asks, do you have a favorite sentence, scene, or passage from the book?
Hi, Erin. That's so exciting that Erin is here. And for those, I'm sure everybody knows Erin, who is the Newbery winner for Hello Universe. And she wrote this amazing middle grade fantasy novel, Leilani of the Distant Sea, which is one of my very favorites. If you haven't read that, you will love it. Okay, so favorite sentence, scene, or passage. Okay, a sentence would be hard. A favorite scene, I would say, okay, so the book is told from Pong's point of view and Nook's point of view. And for most of the book, they do not see each other. So a big part of the story is that they're looking at the same situation. They're approaching the same scene, but with a completely different lens. Like Pong sees it one way and Nook sees it a different way. But there are a few scenes where they actually come together. And so those were probably my favorite scenes to write. They're just so crackling with tension. They, at first when they come together, they really completely misunderstand each other. They hate each other. They fear each other. Each one of them represents what the other one fears the most, So the scenes where they come together were probably my very favorite ones to write. Also the food scenes. There was a lot of food. That's a great question.
It makes me really want mangoes too.
Yeah, always.
Thank you so much. So our next one is, we're going to go to Emily, who's age 9. And Emily asks, where did you get the idea for the orbs?
Oh, for the orbs. That's such a good question. I'm so glad you asked that, Emily. And that I have a daughter who's 10, so it's so nice to see you in here. So the orbs come from my experience of going to Thailand as a kid. So I don't know if anyone here watching has ever traveled to Asia, or if you've traveled, even if you've really just traveled from like California to New York, you get this thing that is called jet lag. And that has to do with like the time zone completely changes. So when you go to Thailand, if you imagine the world and Texas is over here, Thailand is literally on the other side of the globe. So literally when it is 8 o'clock in the morning here, and I call my dad in Thailand, it is 8 o'clock at night there. So when I would go over there to visit my family as a kid, all our time would be completely mixed up. You just kind of feel like you're like in a dream, you're walking around in a dream, and then you're not sleepy at night. And so as a kid, this crazy thing happens where you get to stay up late. Like I would be out late at night with my family. We would be eating and walking around. It'd be like midnight and I would be allowed to be, out walking in the streets. So I have memories of, going out to eat or just being close to the water late at night in this dreamlike state. And there's so many lights in Bangkok, and they all reflect in the river. And it's just the most magical feeling. You feel like the lights are magic. So that's the idea that kind of led to the orbs, that they would literally be created by magic. And then the way that they are different colors, and the different colors are different brightnesses, and only certain people can afford the brightest lights. That is really, that really comes from the idea of the story that so many of the problems in the story come from inequality, and the fact that people are not treated equally and given the compassion that they deserve. Such a good question.
Oh, thank you for painting that beautiful picture. Yeah, thanks. So our next one is from Carolyn, and Carolyn asks, I love the color art. Did you get to choose the illustrator, or did you work together?
Oh, such a good question. I did not choose the illustrator. A lot of people don't know this, but authors so rarely get to have input on what their covers are. So when you get a beautiful cover, sometimes you're just like, oh my God, I hit the jackpot. I agree. The cover is so beautiful. And so I'll say the artist's name again, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. It's Ji Hyuk Kim. And he's done many other book covers as well. And all of his art is very, like, there's a quality about it that looks like it's actually lighted up. Like, he uses little like spots of white. I don't know how he does it. It's so pretty. And so when they showed me, this is the artist that we're thinking of, I was like, oh yes, like I just love his covers. They're so beautiful. I didn't I didn't tell him what to paint, but I did send a lot of pictures of Thailand, scenes on the river. I sent a lot of pictures of Thai kids so he could see, like, what Thai boys and Thai girls look like. And then, that we just had like teeny tiny, was almost how it was when it first came through. And I just had like teeny tiny little things that I suggested, but for the most part, I just went, ooh, that's so beautiful. Good question.
Yeah, it really is. So our next one is from Nancy. And Nancy asks, if you can play any character on stage in Les Mis, who would you want to be?
Oh my gosh, in the musical? Okay, so for those of you that don't know, Les Mis is not only a book, but it is a musical, and it is the best musical. That's not an opinion, that's a fact. Okay, so when I was younger, I would have said Eponine, because in the musical, she's just like this tragic, amazing teenage character who has such great songs and such great scenes. She is such a minor character in the book. Like, after I saw the musical and then I went to read the book, I was like, oh, she's like she does not have that amazing scene in the book. But now that I'm older, I would say I would want to play one of the Thénardiers. Because they just have, those people look like they're having so much fun when they're dancing around on the stage and singing. They have the best songs, I think, even though they're so wicked. But that would be fun, right? It's fun to play a villain. Wonderful question.
Oh, thank you so much. So we'll take another one. Our next one is from Heidi, and Heidi asks, what lessons about social justice do you hope young readers will take away from the story?
Oh, that's such a good question. One of the reasons that Les Mis struck me so much when I was a kid and my mom was telling me the story is because it was one of the first times that it really pushed against things that I thought I knew. So up until that point, up until I was 10, I thought, that good people follow the law. And if you break the law, that you're a bad person and it's wrong to break the law. And this was one of the first times when I really started thinking, oh no, actually, that's not how it is at all. It's not so black and white. And there are laws that are wrong. And not everyone who is working, in government and in the law is necessarily doing the right thing. And not everyone who's broken the law is a bad person and has, not everyone needs to be punished for that. so it was just sort of this lightning moment, I think, that kind of broke open my way of thinking about everything about the world. And I just think that that is the most incredible part of literature, is that it can change the way you're thinking. You don't even leave your house. You don't even talk to another person. You are just in the pages of a book, and it can completely change who you are and change the trajectory of your life. So, you know, A Wish in the Dark, I never meant for it to be exactly like an allegory for our modern times. I didn't mean for it to be like a metaphor for anything that's happening now. But I think that if you read it, you'll be able to draw a lot of parallels to things that we see now, where that the law does not always treat people with compassion. And you know, what if we ask the question, what if we showed compassion to every single person? How could that change the world? So that's what I hope that that kids are going to start talking about or think about after they read the book. So thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that too. I think one of my favorite things is something that Father Cam says when he says to Pong, "Thank you for teaching me that," what was it? Teaching me that desperate people deserve our compassion and not our judgment.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, when he says that, the way that Father Chum teaches people is he doesn't like teach them, right? Like he lets them come to their own conclusions, which is, I think, the best type of teacher. But when he says that, I really do think that he is constantly, you know, absorbing that himself. I think it's hard to tell yourself everyone deserves compassion. It's not easy for me to show compassion to everyone. There's a lot of people that make me angry, and that, you know, it's hard for me to commiserate with and to have empathy for. But so I wanted to put that in there because I think that he is always relearning that himself, even though he's the teacher.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So we'll take another question. So our next one is from Vivian, and Vivian asks, so what inspired you to write A Wish in the Dark? Like, what brought you to this book?
Oh man, I don't know. It's so funny because I feel like people always want to know like where an idea for a story comes from. And I think I'm a lot of authors that are just like, it just came. and after you've worked on a book for so long, you know, you work on it for sometimes years, definitely many months, and then it's years before it comes out. It's hard to remember where the actual story comes from. I've always wanted to tackle Les Mis. I always felt like it would be such a great middle grade story because there's so much action, and those big questions that we're talking about social justice and about compassion. Those are questions that I think middle grade readers are so into, like they want to think about it, they want to talk about it, but I just couldn't figure out how to do it. And so when I started thinking, well, I would like to write about Thailand, that all just sort of clicked because my dad, you know, he did not grow up in a prison, and he had a much better life than Pong did, but he had a pretty tough, scrappy life. He and his friends, they were all working by the time they were like 12 or 13. You know, they worked actual jobs, and they were, you know, running around at night and getting into fights and doing lots of things like that. So when I thought about setting it in Thailand and making characters like him and his friends, then it sort of started to click more. I actually, Leah, I forgot I have a picture that I want to share if I can get it.
Go ahead.
So this is, if I can get it right. So this is my dad and his brother at the airport in Thailand on the day that they immigrated to the United States. And this is some cousins, and this is his sister, his older sister. But I wanted to show this picture because it's one of my very favorite pictures. And if you think about like how we get on planes now, back when we used to be able to get on planes, and you know everybody wears like their sweats or whatever, look at how they're dressed when they came to the US. They're wearing like these suits. I think they look like the Beatles or something, you know, like they're just so dapper. And look at my aunt, she's like got this cool beehive hairdo. So this is, that's in the 60s, late 60s when they came over. And that sort of era really inspired A Wish in the Dark, for sure. Like this like swinging, stylish time when there's lots of great music and people hanging out by the water. That was so I really wanted to share that picture with you guys.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. So we'll take a few more questions. So our next one comes from our friend Min. And Min asks, just how many books do you have coming out in 2020? So might kind of segue into maybe another book you're also coming out with. And related, why do you insist on putting on authors to shave?
Min, whatever. Min also has a bunch of books out. So for those of you who don't know, this is Min Lay, and he is a picture book author, and he also has a graphic novel that just came out, Green Lantern Legacy. It's awesome. You guys should get that one. And his newest picture book with Dan Santat just came out, which is called Lift, right? Lift. Mm-hmm. And I've ordered it and it's not here yet, but I'm really excited for it. So Min, thank you. I swear I did not pay him to say that. Okay, this year I have 7 books coming out this year. So I have 2 picture books and 2 chapter books, 2 chapter books in the Diary of an Ice Princess chapter book series. And then I have A Wish in the Dark, and no, it's 3 chapter books. And then I also have a nonfiction book. So this is all 13. This is a nonfiction middle grade account of the Thai cave rescue. So I did not plan on having 2 books about Thailand come out in 1 year, but while I was still doing edits for A Wish in the Dark, you may remember this was like 2 years ago, this summer, the soccer team was trapped in a cave in Thailand, and it was a huge international rescue effort to go in and get them out. They had to scuba dive them out. And so I was actually in Thailand when that was happening and flew back to the US as they were getting rescued. And so I just decided I really, really wanted to go back and write a book about it. So I went back and interviewed a lot of the people who were involved in the rescue, and I got to meet the boys and meet their soccer coach. And so this book is going to come out in October of this year. So I'm really excited because it would just be a dream just to have one book about Thailand coming out in the year, and then to get to have 2 is just such a thrill. So both of those are coming out with Candlewick. Thank you, Min. You're so nice.
Nice. Thank you so much. And wow, I don't know how you also have all the time to get all these books out too.
Well, definitely last year was a little bit crazy. Doing the nonfiction book, writing nonfiction is way harder than writing fiction, where you get to fiction, you just get to make it all up. In nonfiction, you have to make sure you get every single thing right. But I'm really excited. We'll have so many great pictures. There's like a picture on every other page in the book. So I can't wait to share that with you guys.
So I think we have time for a few more. So a few more questions. So our next question is coming from Romy and Enzo. And they ask, what character did you connect with the most when writing your amazing book?
Oh, that's such a great question. Hi, Romy. Hi, Enzo. So in A Wish in the Dark, the character I connect with the most is actually Nok. So I think she's the most like me. You know, when she starts off, Nok has a secret, and it's a secret that she's ashamed of. And so that's sort of like why she does what she's doing, why she's trying to catch Pong and turn him in, because she really wants to kind of overshadow this dark secret of hers that she's embarrassed about. She wants her family to be proud of her. But when the story starts off, you know, she's lived a life of privilege, and she's never had to question her privilege and what her her responsibilities are to the rest of the people in her community. So she very much thinks like I was saying, you know, when I was a kid, and just thinks, well, if you break the law, then you should be punished for breaking the law. There should never be a good reason to break the law, or, you know, the law is always right. That's sort of what she thinks. And over the course of the story, she, of course, learns that that's not true. So she does the most changing in the book. And so I think out of all of them, I think I put myself most into her, and hope that I've changed in my life too, and my way of thinking. Always still changing, still learning all the time.
So we'll take one more question. And actually our last question is one that I always like to ask too. So our last one's from Cannon. And Cannon asks, what are some other books you have been reading, and do you have some recommendations?
So good. I'm so glad that Erin and Trada Kelly asked that question earlier, because I highly recommend Leilani of the Distant Sea. If you love fantasy, you're going to love that one. And I just put in a book order, and I just got these yesterday. So these are books I have not read yet, but I'm really excited about, because all of my friends are so excited about these books and reading these books. So the first one is Keep It Together, Keiko Carter by Debbie Michiko Florence. And this is a book that when I saw the cover, I was like, oh my gosh, why didn't they have this book when I was in middle school? Like, look how adorable that cover is. And it's got this Asian American protagonist on the front, chocolate on the back. It's just a classic all-American story of, you know, navigating middle school and how friendships change, and you throw a little romance in there, and and I love that there is some light romance, because that happens in middle school, and that's something that I always liked to read about. The case cover is falling off of Ghost Squad, but I just got Ghost Squad, which I'm really excited about too, which is another middle grade fantasy, and it totally has like Coco vibes and Stranger Things vibes, and I can't wait for this. And this is falling off because I was just admiring the beautiful embossed cover for this. So this is by Clarabelle Ortega. And then this is a book that I just got that my daughter is fighting me for, and actually she got it first, so she's reading it and I haven't gotten to start it yet. But this is by Victoria Jameson and Omar Mohammed, When Stars Are Scattered, and this is a graphic novel that I can't wait to read, and it's a memoir of Omar's that Victoria helped to tell the story for, and I'm a huge fan of Victoria Jameson's Roller Girls, one of my very favorite books, so I'm excited about that one. And then I also started reading a YA that's by June Her. It's called Silence the Bones, and it is so good. I'm already swept away. It's a historical fiction, and it's kind of like it's a crime story, historical crime drama, and it's beautiful. Yeah, highly recommend. Very cinematic.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Those are amazing books too, and of course, your book is so amazing, so I'm excited for everybody who hasn't read it to be introduced to this great world and great characters, as well as those other books too, and all of our other friends, other authors that have spoken to. So thank you everyone so much for your questions. They're awesome. I'm sorry we didn't have enough time to hit all of them. But of course, thank you so much, Christina, for joining us this afternoon and sharing your amazing book and your amazing story. And of course, thank you so much, viewers, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. Really, really glad that we got to be together, even though we weren't together. It's so nice to virtually be together.
Yes. So also, of course, don't forget, you can still click that shining green button on the bottom and get your own copy of A Witch in the Dark, as well as Christina's other awesome books, as well as all the other ones we've mentioned today too. So I hope you've all enjoyed the event today. If you want to find out about more events, you can click that follow button at the top, so you can follow Politics and Prose. You can also rewatch all of our other events too. A lot of our other authors that I mentioned, we've done events, so you can rewatch those as well, and get updates on our website of upcoming listings. You can also follow the Children and Teen Department on social media at Kids in Prose Doc. And I hope you can all join us again soon for our upcoming events. Thank you so much. Keep reading and expanding your world, and stay safe. Christina, is there anything else you want to share before we say goodbye?
No, just thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Leah. You're a great moderator, and Politics and Prose has been a great host. So I look forward to when we can actually come and visit your store again in person.
Yes, hopefully we can see you all again soon back in the store. But thank you all so much for still joining us in this virtual format. So stay safe and keep reading and enjoy these great worlds.
Bye. Bye, everybody.